Hey guys, welcome back to Q's Barbecue and Bakery. I'm Joris, and today I'm putting in another chapter on the Weber and SlownSear versus Big Green Egg duel. So yesterday evening I was cooking dinner for my wife. It was her birthday, and my wife really loves a reverse sear flank steak or ribeye. The way I usually do that is on my Big Green Egg, do a 2-zone setup, and then I finish it off on these beautiful cast iron grates. But that got me thinking, you can also do the reverse sear on a Weber kettle with a SlownSear. And the SlownSear is set up not only to do slow, but also sear. But I don't have a cast iron grate for my Weber, but I do have the sear grate from the gourmet system from Weber. So that got me thinking, let's do a comparison. I'm gonna set up the Big Green Egg and the Weber for 2-zone cooking, and we're gonna test that out with 2 pieces of flank steak and then see which turns out better, the Weber or the Big Green Egg. So we'll start by setting up the Big Green Egg. As you see, I cleaned it out completely, so we're going to start with a fresh batch of charcoal. So I usually take 2 of these charcoal baskets. That's more than enough to sustain our cook. Then we are going to insert the Egspander. That's going to help with our setup. We're going to put in 2 of these tumbleweeds. So we're going to put in our Halfmoon deflecting stone, because that will give us a cool zone and a direct zone. Put in our drip tray. Then our griddle grates. So we've set up our 2-zone cooking system in the Big Green Egg. I'm going to leave this open, that way I can light the tumbleweeds, and later when the cooker has come up to temperature, I can add a chunk of hickory wood. Now let's move on to setting up our Weber kettle with the SlownSear. So here I have my SlownSear. I have the water reservoir still in for the first phase of the cook. I have some coconut briquettes in the corner. I'm going to light those up using a makeshift Luft lighter. This is the one that you saw me promote in another video. It's cheap, but it works. So we're going to light that up, then fill the remaining chamber of the SlownSear with unlit briquettes, and then we get our even temperature on this side. And here is our drip tray. So in our SlownSear, as you can see here, the briquettes are nice and ashed over. They're really hot. So let's fill up the rest of the SlownSear. This is more than enough for our cook, and to make sure that we get the same smoke flavor as we get on the Big Green Egg, I'm also going to put 1 piece of hickory just here, and now we're going to let both kettles come up to a temperature of somewhere between 120 to 130 degrees Celsius, so roughly about 250 to 60 Fahrenheit. So the way I measure, on both grills I will be using my iGrill, and we will insert a temperature probe on both kettles in a similar way. So here our charcoal is nice and lit. I've installed a temperature probe here as well. Now the important part is to let the ceramics come up to temperature. And once that's done and we have our temperature dialed in, we'll put in our hickory chunk. So during the warming up phase of my bakery neck, I want to make sure that I keep a clean fire. Now I always set for these kinds of cooks my lower vent to 1 finger's width down below, and I do not touch it. That gives me maximum control with the top vent. Now let me show you how I do that on the Weber kettle. So here on the Weber kettle, you see that I have the lower vent setting half open. I've made these markings that you see, and the far right hand is fully open, the far left hand side is fully closed, and the middle is halfway open. So for the kettle to come up to temperature, I'm going to leave it in the middle position, and as we reach our desired temperature, we will start to close that up, probably to the second or third notch from the left. So with both kettles coming up to temperature, let me show you what kind of flank steak we're going to put on these cookers. So here we have our 2 pieces of flank steak, or as we call them here in Holland, buffet. You call them flank steak, I think, in the US, or even skirt steak. The characteristic is of the long fibers here that you see, but there's a nice bit of fat in there that helps with keeping it moist during the cook. I'm going to put the Bold and Beefy Blues Hog rub on it. This is one of our favorite rubs for steaks and burgers or brisket. I'm going to season them liberally because I like to have a pretty salty steak with some pepper and garlic. I'm going to do both sides, and then I'm going to let that sit for about 20 minutes and make sure that the salt does its work on the meat. Now, as we wait for our rub to basically do its magic on our beef, I want to point out a few things here. First, you see when the bakery neck is coming up to temperature, and I added the smoking wood when the charcoal was already lit and I put it on top of it, you'll see this white billowy smoke. Now, regardless whether or not the cooker is on temperature, you have to wait before you put on your meat. This is not the kind of smoke you want to have on your meat. You want to have a more clear, bluish smoke before you put your meat on. You'll see that on the Weber it's already thinned out, so that's already much more stable fire than it is currently on our bakery neck. So we'll give this a couple of more minutes, and until this white billowy smoke has disappeared, we'll put our meat on our kettles. We're there. As you see now, the smoke has disappeared. It's not white and billowy, it's just thin and slightly bluish. So time to put our meat on both kettles. We'll start with the bakery neck. And now we put it on our Weber kettle. During the cook, I didn't put any meter probes in, but I will be checking in about 20 to 25 minutes with my thermopen to see where we are. For this first phase, I'm aiming to take them off when they're about 48, 49 degrees Celsius core temperature, letting them rest. That will rise the temperature up to about 50 degrees Celsius. Then we'll start with the sear part of our process. So it's been about 20 minutes since we've put our flank steaks on both cookers. Let's see where we are in terms of cooking temperature. So we have our big green egg steak at 47, 49. So yeah, we're going to take this one off and let it rest. Let's see where we are with the Weber. We are at 48, 49, 50. Yeah, done as well. So let this rest while we switch up our cookers. The first thing that I see or notice when taking both pieces of meat off the cookers is that the flank steak from the big green egg up to this point has a much darker color in terms of smoke. It's a little bit more brownish mahogany, and the Weber Kettle isn't. It's actually a little bit more pale, even a little bit more moist. That's interesting. That's the first things we noticed in terms of difference between cooking on the Weber versus cooking on the big green egg. So let's set up our kettles for the sear part of the cook. So in our big green egg, we are going to put our cast iron grill grate. Yeah, it's a bit of a snug fit, but there we go. Now as you see, I've put this on a lower level, which is more direct to the coals. Now let's put back the other grill grate. You see the level difference? This is the level we'll be cooking on for the sear part. But first we gotta let the coals get really screaming hot, because that cast iron needs to be hot. Now let's move over to our Weber Kettle. So on the Weber Kettle, I don't have a cast iron grate, but I do have the sear grate. So I'm going to place the sear grate over the hot coals. I'll let that come up to temperature. I'm going to fully open the bottom and top vent to let the briquettes come up to temperature and the sear grate. So both cookers have come up to temperature. Both are screaming hot. So let me show you the sear first on the big green egg, and then we'll do the Weber sear. Let's open our cooker. Oh, yeah, there's a super amount of heat coming from that charcoal. So let's put on our steak. Beautiful. We'll give this about a minute, minute and a half, and then we'll flip it to the other side. So let's see what we have so far. Yeah, you see the stripes from the cast iron, so let's turn that a quarter. Everybody loves grill marks. Give that another minute. So let's see. Yeah, that's beautiful. I think we're done here with this steak. Now we're going to let that rest and work on our Weber steak. So let's take our Weber steak, put that on the screaming hot cast iron grate, and let's hear that sizzle. We're also going to give this 1 minute. So let's check our progress. Yeah, we're getting some sear marks. Time to flip it over. Give it 1 or 2 minutes on the other side. So it seems to me that this one is done as well. It has some nice sear marks. Color has darkened. You see some fat bubbling. So yeah, it's time to let this baby rest. Now, while these steaks are resting, let me give you a close-up of what they look like. This is our big green egg steak. And this is our steak from the Weber with the SlownSear. So we've rested both steaks. So on my left hand side here we have the Hickory neck steak, and on my right hand side we have the Weber steak. So let's see. Let's start with the Weber steak. First, let's see what we end up from the inside. Let's cut against the grain. And it has turned out beautifully pink. And let's see how we end up with our Hickory neck steak from the inside. Well, that is a similar result. That is, I'd say the Weber steak is slightly more pinkish. So let's start tasting our Weber steak. I want to slice it a little bit thinner and have a taste. Interesting. Nice and peppery from our bold and beefy rub. Not a whole lot of smoke flavor. Let's see our our Hickory neck steak. Let's take a piece of that. Yeah, you gotta try to believe it, but there is actually a substantial amount more smoke flavor in the Hickory neck steak. Both have cooked similarly in terms of rawness or doneness. I do like the color on the Hickory neck steak a little bit better than I do on the Weber steak. That has to do, I think, with fuel. In the Weber steak I used Ecobrasa, basically coconut briquettes, and in the Hickory neck I used lump charcoal. So that automatically is a difference. When it comes to flavor, the difference is small, but I had to favor the Hickory neck in terms of flavor. Then when you look at the cooking process, I found that the Hickory neck is a lot easier to handle for these types of cooks. Set up a 2-zone, work with it, raise the temperature. I had to fiddle around with the Weber a little bit better to get it stabilized in this setup, but also to raise the temperature. When you wanted to have it low and slow on one hand, like 120 degrees Celsius, and then ramp up the heat. In the end, I had to take out my heat gun to heat up the briquettes even quicker, otherwise I couldn't get up to a high enough temperature. So that being said, from a process perspective, I also have to give this one to the Hickory neck. That being said, could you serve this Weber reverse sear to your friends and family? Hell yeah. Would they love it? Definitely. So are we nitpicking? Probably. But again, that's just my opinion. There we have it. For me, unexpectedly, a clear winner. I'll give this one to the Hickory neck. Thank you for sticking around with me on this cook. If you liked the video, hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. I'd love to have more viewers. And I'll see you guys next time. And don't forget, fail fast, learn fast. Just keep grilling.